There is no perfectly constructed team in the NBA, and as the season progresses, the teams tend to be able to identify the areas they struggle in the most. In the offseason, teams address these needs in free agency and in the draft, but obviously while the season is underway, they really only have one way to address these kind of things, and that's through trades. For the topic of today's video, we'll be going through every single NBA team and identifying one player that the team should look to shop before the trade deadline, with reasoning varying from case to case. Some teams need a big move, while others may only be looking for smaller moves. My last video was actually part 1 of this topic where we went through the teams in the Eastern Conference, and this video is now where we'll be going through the teams in the Western Conference, so go check out that last video after this one as well. Before we start though, it turns out about 67% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now, with that being said, let's begin. Going in alphabetical order, the first team up is the Dallas Mavericks, and the player they should look to trade is Dwight Powell. Powell got a decent-sized contract extension a little while back, but injuries have impacted his play, and he's not quite the same player that he was beforehand anymore. He also plays at a crowded position on the Mavericks, with players like Maxi Kleber and Willie Cauley-Stein also at the center spot, along with the fact that Kristaps Porzingis can play some center in more spaced-out lineups. So especially with the team underachieving so far this season, Powell could be used as trade bait to address some of their areas of need. The next team up is the Denver Nuggets, and the player they should look to trade is Gary Harris. Harris also received a hefty $20 million per year contract a little while ago, and since then his offensive production has really suffered. Defensively though, he has been terrific, which means he will have plenty of value on the open market and could get the Nuggets a piece or two that would fit better into their team. The next team up is the Golden State Warriors, and the player they should look to trade is Kelly Oubre. The Warriors brought in Oubre hoping he could mask the loss of Klay Thompson in the offseason due to injury, but so far it's safe to say that those expectations have fallen way short. His shooting has fallen off a cliff, and his decision-making is pretty questionable at times as well in a system that relies on structure, but his history as a reliable contributor should still intrigue teams enough to take a chance on him going after him in hopes that he returns to form, while the Warriors can find a better alternative at that position. The next team up is the Houston Rockets, and the player they should look to trade is PJ Tucker. Tucker's definitely getting up there in age, and his ability to impact games isn't quite what it once was, but he's still a very good defender, can reliably knock down corner threes, and is the exact kind of person you want in the locker room of a contending team. Teams will certainly come calling about Tucker as the trade deadline approaches, and with his contract expiring at the end of the season, it would be best for the team to capitalize on his value while it's still there. The next team up is the Los Angeles Clippers, and the player they should look to trade is Lou Williams. Williams is another player whose production is on the decline, and if he's not scoring the ball at a high level, he's been a bit of a detriment to the Clippers at times. He's actually shooting the ball relatively well still, but he's been especially poor on defense, and the Clippers have reduced his role dramatically as a result. There will definitely be teams in need of shot creation off of their bench though, so the Clippers could use him to try to go after more of a playmaker or one of the other areas they need to fill if they want to compete at the top and outperform expectations after their disappointing season last year. The next team up is the Los Angeles Lakers, and the player they should look to trade is Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma's always been a controversial figure on the Lakers, as his production on the court has historically been pretty hit or miss, but this season he's actually been shooting the ball better than usual. The Lakers under LeBron James will continue to do everything in their power to go all in on winning rings, and Kuzma is one of their last valuable assets that they would realistically be willing to move on from if it meant getting someone that could help the team more in the moment. Next up is the Memphis Grizzlies, and the player they should look to trade is Gorgui Dieng. Dieng's, strangely enough, been shooting the ball incredibly well from 3 this year, making over 50% of his attempts, ranking near the top in terms of percentage, and his expiring contract, combined with the fact that the Grizzlies have a ton of cap space moving forward, means they can take some risks in what they use him to acquire if some value in terms of picks are attached to it. Plus, with Xavier Tillman playing well lately at his position, Jang has become very expendable as the team looks to once again try to make a playoff push. Up next is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the player they should look to trade is Ricky Rubio. The thought with bringing Rubio back as a bit of experience in the locker room for this young team was good in theory, but it just hasn't panned out. The team once again looks headed for the bottom of the standings, and Rubio himself has been having a pretty poor year comparatively. He's still a very good playmaker and passer, his experience would still be intriguing for contending teams as a backup point guard, despite the down year he's having, and for that, he is the choice here. Next up is the New Orleans Pelicans, and the player they should look to trade is Lonzo Ball. I've discussed this in a prior video, but the Pelicans aren't really built for Lonzo Ball to be able to play to his strengths. They play at a far slower pace than a team with him as the primary creator should be playing, and he just doesn't look very comfortable out there at times. There have already been rumors that he's available to be traded for, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if a deal gets done where he could go to a team that maybe pushes the pace more often. The next team up is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the player they should look to trade is Al Horford. Horford's season last year was pretty disastrous, but now in an environment with less pressure, he's having himself a pretty decent rebound year where his value is climbing back up. His contract is still pretty awful, but he's shown he can still be an impactful player, and with the Thunder having demonstrated the fact that they want all of the draft picks they can get, they might be able to get some draft capital in return for him now that his value has increased at least a little bit. The next team up is the Phoenix Suns, and the player they should look to trade is Dario Saric. Saric is a pretty talented and versatile forward, but the issue is he seems to be the odd man out on this Suns team gunning for a playoff run. The Suns have a ton of players at the forward positions that have grown comfortable in their roles, and they also have a few younger guys that will get better over time, so Saric seems to be the most expendable if they want to try to make one more win-now move before the playoffs begin. The next team up is the Portland Trail Blazers, and the player they should look to trade is Anfernee Simons. Simons is in his third NBA season, and he hasn't really shown that much improvement at the backup point guard spot. I wouldn't say by any means to give up on him as a player, because he is still a pretty good scoring option to have in a limited role, but the Blazers are still focused on trying to help Lillard and McCollum win together, and Simons is one of their few pieces that are both expendable and have a bit of value to them. Next up is the Sacramento Kings, and the player they should look to trade is Nemanja Bjelica. The Kings have been rolling without Bjelica playing a role in the recent success, and overall, he's having a down year himself after earning a role in the front court as a floor spacing shooter. He too is on the last year of his contract, so the risk that comes with trading for him for a team looking to take a chance on a shooter at the deadline isn't very high, and the Kings should capitalize on that potential opportunity. The next team up is the San Antonio Spurs, and the player they should look to trade is Demar Derozan. The Spurs have been surprisingly good so far this season, which makes this an interesting situation, but if they begin to fade out of the playoff picture, then Derozan could become the best player on the market. He still clearly has a lot to give to teams, and he could be the target for contenders to make a big splash before a run, and in return, the Spurs could get more long-term value as they continue their focus on developing their next generation of players. And finally, the last team up is the Utah Jazz, and the player they should look to trade is Udoka Azubuike. This isn't a flashy choice by any means, but he's a young and promising player that could prove to be a capable center at this level, but he just simply isn't going to get the chance to show it in Utah with how crowded the center position is for this team as they look to continue on their first place run. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below anyone else you think these teams could look to trade this season. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.